The sun hung lazily in the sky, drenching the suburban neighborhood in a golden afternoon glow. The heat was thick, pressing against the pavement, making the air shimmer like a mirage. Behind the pristine hedges and sprawling driveways, the sound of splashing water echoed from a private backyard pool, laughter punctuating the air like melody. Jasmine Carter leaned back on a lounge chair beside the pool, the cool water from her last swim still clinging to her deep brown skin. Her natural curls were pulled into a high puff, the humidity causing tendrils to escape around her face. She exhaled, taking in the scent of chlorine mixed with freshly cut grass. This was her sanctuary, a peaceful escape from the relentless pace of her career. But her tranquility was shattered by the sharp, clipped voice of a woman standing just beyond the fence. "Excuse me." The voice was laced with accusation, cutting through the peaceful hum of cicadas. Jasmine turned her head and found herself locking eyes with a woman in her mid-50s, wearing oversized sunglasses and an expensive-looking tennis outfit. The woman's face was twisted in suspicion, her posture stiff as she clutched her phone. "Can I help you?" Jasmine asked, her voice measured. "Yes, actually." The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "I live a few houses down, and I couldn't help but notice you in this pool. Do you live here?" Jasmine's fingers tightened around the edge of her lounge chair. She recognized the tone immediately. It was the same condescending, doubtful voice she had encountered too many times before. "Yes, I do," Jasmine replied calmly, though her pulse quickened. "This is my home." The woman's head tilted slightly, as if she were processing a complex equation that somehow didn't add up. Her eyes flicked toward the house, its modern design standing in contrast to more traditional homes on the block. Jasmine had moved in 3 months ago, yet this wasn't the first time she felt watched, scrutinized. "I see," the woman said, though she clearly didn't. She glanced at her phone. "Well, you understand I had to check. You don't really seem like—" Jasmine arched a brow. "Like what?" The woman hesitated before forcing a tight smile. "Like someone who lives here." Jasmine let out a slow breath. She had prepared herself for moments like this, but that didn't make them any less exhausting. She could already feel the heat rising in her chest, a mix of frustration and hurt. The woman was still watching her, phone gripped tightly in one manicured hand. The implication was clear. Jasmine's presence in this space was an anomaly. Jasmine had worked too hard for this. The long nights, the countless rejections, the endless battle to prove herself in an industry where she was often the only black woman in the room. She had built her career from the ground up, earned every dollar that had gone into purchasing this home. And yet, here she was, having to justify her own existence. Again, the weight of it settled in her chest, familiar yet still suffocating. She had been raised to carry herself with grace, to pick her battles wisely. But at what cost? She thought of her parents, their voices echoing in her mind. "Jasmine, you can't let them see you sweat. You have to be twice as good, work twice as hard." She had done all of that, and still, here was another obstacle, another test. She felt the pressure behind her ribs, the push and pull of anger and restraint. She could already predict what would happen next. If she pushed back too hard, she would be labeled aggressive. If she stayed silent, she would be complicit in her own erasure. Her fingers twitched toward her phone. Should she record this? Call someone? Make a statement? But then, why should she have to? The woman hadn't moved, her expression hovering between suspicion and self-righteousness. Jasmine could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the calculations of whether she should escalate this further. Then, as if on cue, the woman lifted her phone and began to dial. Jasmine's stomach clenched. Was she really doing this? "Are you calling the police?" Jasmine asked, voice low and even. "I just think it's best to verify," the woman said with an airy shrug. "You understand, right?" Jasmine felt her jaw tighten. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, the irony, but there was nothing funny about the way her body tensed, how her breath hitched at the thought of what might come next. This wasn't just about her right now. This was about every time someone had questioned her qualifications, her credibility, her very presence. And she was done playing this game. Jasmine sat up straighter, her voice calm but firm. You don't need to verify anything. You're trespassing on my property. I'd like you to leave. The woman blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. But then she let out a scoff, shaking her head as if Jasmine was the one in the wrong. I'll just let the police handle this, she said, pressing the phone to her ear. Jasmine exhaled sharply. A familiar anger bubbled under her skin, but alongside it, something else. Something steadier. A deep, unshakable certainty. This woman had no idea who she was dealing with, and she was about to find out. The woman's name, as Jasmine would soon learn, was Patricia Whitmore. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was a self-proclaimed community watchdog, a title she bestowed upon herself without anyone asking. Patricia had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years, and in her mind, that made her an authority on who belonged and who didn't. With her sharp, scrutinizing gaze and the ever-present phone in her hand, she was the type who thrived on control, treating the neighborhood like her personal domain. She was the one who reported suspicious cars parked on the street, even if they were just visitors. The one who sent passive-aggressive emails about trash bins being placed a few inches out of line. The one who always had a reason to check in on new residents, especially the ones who didn't fit the image she had of the neighborhood. And right now, Patricia was staring at Jasmine like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. As the phone pressed to Patricia's ear, Jasmine could hear the unmistakable beep of a 911 call connecting. Jasmine's chest tightened, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. She had seen this play out before, too many times in news stories and viral videos. A baseless accusation, a phone call, an unnecessary escalation, all over something as simple as existing in her own space. Initial conflict scene. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was crisp and professional. Patricia's lips curled into a self-satisfied smirk as she turned away slightly, her voice dropping into a faux concerned tone. Yes. Hello. I'd like to report an intruder at 416 Oak Ridge Drive. Jasmine's stomach lurched. Patricia had just given her address. I believe there's someone in the backyard who doesn't belong here, Patricia continued smoothly. I think she might be trespassing. Jasmine took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Are you serious right now? She asked, her voice steady but firm. Patricia didn't even look at her. Yes, she's still here, she said into the phone. She's refusing to leave. Jasmine's blood boiled. I own this house, she said louder this time. You have no right to call the police on me in my own home. Patricia turned then, arching a perfectly plucked brow. Oh, then why don't you prove it? Jasmine exhaled sharply. I don't have to prove anything to you. You're trespassing on my property. Patricia smiled, a condescending, syrupy expression that made Jasmine's skin crawl. Well, I just want to make sure everything's in order, she said lightly, as if this were all just a friendly neighborhood concern. I mean, you can't blame me, can you? A house like this, in a place like this, you have to admit, it's a little surprising. There it was, the quiet implication behind her words. Jasmine clenched her jaw. You mean because I'm black? Patricia blinked, feigning innocence. I never said that. You didn't have to. The dispatcher's voice crackled through Patricia's phone. Ma'am, have you confirmed that this individual is actually trespassing? Patricia's lips thinned. Well, no, but... I live here, Jasmine interrupted, stepping forward. This is my house. My name is Jasmine Carter, and I don't appreciate my own neighbor falsely reporting me to the police. Patricia's expression flickered, just for a second, a brief moment of hesitation, as if she hadn't expected Jasmine to push back so firmly. But then, just as quickly, the smugness returned. Oh, I'm sure you say that, she replied airily. But it's always best to be cautious, don't you think? The dispatcher sighed audibly. Ma'am, if the person is telling you they live there, I suggest you confirm before involving law enforcement unnecessarily. Patricia bristled at the implied reprimand. She hesitated for a beat before letting out a forced laugh. Oh, well, maybe it was just a misunderstanding. No harm, no foul, right? She disconnected the call before the dispatcher could respond. Then, with a saccharine smile, she turned back to Jasmine. You should be grateful, you know. I was only looking out for the neighborhood. Jasmine's hands tightened into fists. You were looking out for yourself. You saw a black woman in a nice house and assumed I didn't belong. Patricia gasped theatrically. How dare you suggest such a thing? I would have done the same thing no matter who it was. Jasmine let out a humorless laugh. Funny, I don't see you calling the police on the white neighbors when they have guests over. Patricia's eyes flashed with something sharp, annoyance, maybe even embarrassment. But she masked it quickly, smoothing down the front of her tennis skirt. Well, she sniffed, if you really do live here, then I suppose there's no problem. Just a misunderstanding. She turned to leave, but Jasmine wasn't finished. Actually, there's a problem, she said, her voice unwavering. You just called the police on a homeowner for no reason. You wasted emergency resources because of your bias. Patricia stiffened, but didn't turn around. And I won't be letting it slide, Jasmine added. That got Patricia's attention. She spun on her heel, her expression tight. Oh, please, what are you going to do? Tell the HOA. Jasmine crossed her arms. Oh, don't worry. I have my own way of handling things. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Patricia's face, building empathy. As Patricia stalked off, Jasmine took a deep breath, forcing herself to release the tension coiled in her muscles. Her heart was still hammering in her chest, but she refused to let it show. She had spent her entire life navigating spaces like this, where people like Patricia wielded their privilege like a weapon, where they acted as gatekeepers, deciding who belonged and who didn't. Jasmine had learned to pick her battles, to stay composed, to smile when she wanted to scream. But there was always a cost, a weight she carried in her bones, the exhaustion of constantly having to prove herself. And yet, she had never backed down before. She wasn't about to start now. Taking one last deep breath, she turned and walked back toward her pool, her mind already racing with her next move. Patricia thought she had power, but she had no idea who she was messing with. Jasmine sat at the edge of her pool, the water glistening under the midday sun. She dipped her fingers in absent-mindedly, staring at the ripples, her mind still replaying the interaction with Patricia. She had handled women like her before, condescending, passive-aggressive, always ready to weaponize her so-called concerns. But Patricia had made a crucial mistake. She had assumed Jasmine was just another woman she could intimidate. What Patricia didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Jasmine wasn't just some homeowner who had stumbled into wealth. She had built her career from the ground up, overcoming every hurdle society had thrown at her. She wasn't just successful, she was influential. Her law firm specialized in discrimination cases, particularly exposing racial profiling incidents. She had the resources, the knowledge, and the connections to make sure Patricia's little stunt wouldn't be forgotten. And if Patricia kept pushing, Jasmine was prepared to push back. Hard, but she wasn't going to show her hand just yet. Not until the moment was right. Escalating encounters. Encounter number 1, the HOA email. The next morning, Jasmine checked her email and was unsurprised to see a message from the Homeowners Association. Subject: concerns regarding property usage. She sighed. Opening the email, she read the carefully worded nonsense about recent concerns raised by a resident regarding unauthorized use of amenities. It didn't take a genius to figure out who had filed a complaint. Jasmine smirked and clicked reply. To the HOA board. If anyone has questions about my right to use the amenities on my property, I suggest they check the deed, which clearly lists my name as a homeowner. However, I'd be happy to provide a formal legal clarification, along with a review of potential discrimination claims if necessary. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. Best, Jasmine Carter, ESQ. She hit send and leaned back in her chair, picturing Patricia's reaction when she realized her little attempt to stir trouble had backfired. Patricia thought she was playing chess. Jasmine was playing a whole different game. Encounter number 2, the pool confrontation. Later that afternoon, Jasmine was back outside, enjoying the sun, when Patricia reappeared. This time, with 2 other neighborhood women in tow. The trio strutted over like they were about to issue an official decree. Jasmine, Patricia began, her voice dripping with faux politeness. We need to have a little chat about community standards. Jasmine raised an eyebrow, lowering her sunglasses. Do we? Yes. One of Patricia's friends chimed in. We've been discussing how important it is to maintain a certain atmosphere in the neighborhood. You know, to keep things classy. Jasmine tilted her head. And you think I'm lowering the property value? Oh, no. Patricia waved a hand, feigning shock. Nothing like that. We just noticed that you've been spending a lot of time outside. With guests. Which is my right. Jasmine pointed out. Patricia smiled tightly. Of course. But you know how these things look. People might start wondering if certain elements are being invited in. Jasmine's expression didn't change, but inside, her patience was running razor thin. Certain elements, she echoed. Look, Patricia said, leaning in, as if offering a friendly warning. I'd hate for you to get any unwanted attention. You wouldn't want people thinking you're renting out your space, would you? Jasmine chuckled, shaking her head. Patricia really didn't know who she was messing with. Well, Patricia, she said, standing up, I do appreciate your concern, but since we're discussing community standards, maybe we should talk about your actions. Patricia blinked. My actions? Yes. Jasmine's voice remained cool, but her gaze was sharp. Calling 911 on your neighbor? Filing false HOA complaints? Lurking around my property? Sound more like harassment than concern. The 2 other women shifted uncomfortably, sensing the change in tone. Patricia started, but Jasmine cut her off with a polite smile. Anyway, she said, slipping her sunglasses back on, I have some work to do. You do know I'm a lawyer, right? Patricia paled. And with that, Jasmine turned and walked away, leaving her speechless. Cliffhangers. Encounter number 3, the unexpected visitor. That evening, Jasmine was about to settle in for a quiet night when she noticed flashing lights outside. Police. Again, her stomach clenched. Was Patricia really pulling this stunt twice? She opened the door before they could knock. The officer standing there looked uncomfortable. Not hostile, not aggressive, just awkward. Miss Carter? That's me? The officer glanced at his notepad. We got a report about, suspicious activity at this residence. Jasmine let out a slow breath. And let me guess, that report came from Patricia Whitmore. The officer hesitated. That was all the confirmation she needed. Jasmine folded her arms. Did she tell you I was a homeowner this time? Well, ma'am, she just said. Because I'm a homeowner, she interrupted, her voice calm but firm. And this is the second time in 2 days that she's wasted police resources because she doesn't like who I am. You do realize that filing false reports is illegal, right? The officer shifted on his feet. Technically. Jasmine sighed, stepping back. Would you like to come inside and see my deed? My ID? Or are we going to start believing actual homeowners over paranoid neighbors? The officer cleared his throat. That won't be necessary, ma'am. He turned slightly, his gaze flicking toward Patricia's house. I'll go have a word with her. Jasmine watched as he walked away, the tension in her chest easing slightly. But as the officer knocked on Patricia's door, Jasmine spotted something she hadn't noticed before. A familiar-looking man standing in the shadows near Patricia's driveway. Her breath caught. It was him. And if he was here, things were about to get very interesting. The next morning, Jasmine sat in her home office, sipping coffee as she scrolled through her emails. She wasn't just any lawyer. She was a high-powered civil rights attorney with a reputation for dismantling cases of racial discrimination. And today, she had work to do. Her phone buzzed. Incoming call, Detective Marcus Reed. Jasmine smirked before answering. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning, Jazz," he said, his voice tinged with amusement. "You know why I'm calling." "I have a strong suspicion." Marcus sighed. "Your neighbor, Patricia Whitmore, filed another complaint last night. Said you were harboring suspicious individuals on your property." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "Ah, yes, suspicious individuals, otherwise known as my friends and family." Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, well, the officer who responded wasn't thrilled about being sent on a wild goose chase. And neither am I. She's wasting department resources. She's also towing the line of criminal harassment," Jasmine pointed out. "That's why I'm calling," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "You want me to have a little chat with her?" Jasmine considered it. "Not yet," she said. "Let her keep digging her own grave." Marcus exhaled. "All right, but keep me posted. You know I've got your back." "I know," Jasmine said with a small smile. "And trust me, she's not ready for what's coming." Resilience under pressure. Later that afternoon, Jasmine stepped outside to find Patricia standing at the edge of her property, waiting. Jasmine sighed, adjusted her sunglasses before strolling over. "Patricia," she greeted, feigning politeness. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Patricia folded her arms, her smile tight. "I think we need to clear the air." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Do we?" "I just want to ensure we're on the same page about expectations in this neighborhood," Patricia continued, her voice syrupy sweet. "You understand how important it is to maintain a certain standard, right?" Jasmine tilted her head. "A certain standard or a certain demographic?" Patricia stiffened. "That's not what I'm saying." "Oh, I think it is," Jasmine said, crossing her arms. "You don't like that someone like me owns this house. So you're trying to make me uncomfortable, calling the police, filing false reports, playing the role of neighborhood watchdog." Patricia's lips pressed together. Jasmine took a slow step forward. "I've been patient. I've played nice. But let me be clear, this is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." Patricia scoffed. "You think you can just bully your way into this neighborhood?" Jasmine smiled. "Oh, Patricia, you have no idea who you're dealing with." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Patricia fuming. Building audience expectation. That evening, Jasmine sat at her desk, pulling up the HOA's bylaws. She had been doing some digging of her own, and what she found, well, Patricia had violated quite a few regulations herself. Unauthorized property modifications, misappropriation of HOA funds, even an old fraud allegation that never quite went away. Jasmine's lips curled into a smirk. Tomorrow, Patricia was going to learn what it felt like to be truly exposed, and there would be no coming back from it. The following morning, the entire neighborhood buzzed with whispers. A special emergency HOA meeting had been called, something that almost never happened. Jasmine arrived early, dressed in a sleek navy blue suit, the kind that commanded respect before she even spoke. She took a seat near the front, her presence alone enough to unsettle Patricia, who sat stiffly at the head of the table, her lips pursed. The HOA president, Mr. Langley, cleared his throat. "All right, let's get this meeting started. We're here to address several pressing concerns regarding conduct within the community." Jasmine leaned back, crossing her legs. "Yes, Mr. Langley. I actually have a few things I'd like to discuss as well." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "This isn't the time for—" "Oh, but it is," Jasmine interrupted smoothly, sliding a thick folder onto the table. "You see, I've spent the past week reviewing HOA policies, financial records, and, well, let's just say some questionable transactions came to my attention." The murmurs around the room grew louder. Patricia's face paled. Mr. Langley frowned. What are you talking about? Jasmine opened the folder. For starters, there are multiple unauthorized withdrawals from the HOA fund. Almost $10,000 unaccounted for. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Patricia shot up from her seat. That's ridiculous. Jasmine held up a hand. Oh, don't worry. I have documentation. And you know what's interesting? All of these withdrawals link back to you, Patricia. The room fell into stunned silence. Jasmine's voice remained calm, deliberate. But that's not all. I also found records of an illegal modification made to your backyard pool, a construction violation that directly goes against HOA policy. She tilted her head. Seems a little hypocritical, doesn't it? Considering how obsessed you are with keeping this neighborhood in order. Patricia's breathing turned shallow. This is a mistake. Jasmine wasn't finished. Oh, and then there's the issue of fraudulent property claims. It turns out, Patricia, that you falsely reported several neighbors for violations that never actually occurred, including myself. She smiled, slow and sharp. Now, why would you do something like that? Patricia was visibly shaking. Mr. Langley turned to her, his expression darkening. Patricia, is this true? Patricia stammered. I was just trying to... Jasmine interjected. Trying to control a neighborhood that was never yours to begin with. A long, heavy silence followed. Then, Mr. Langley turned back to Jasmine. Miss Lawson, would you be willing to assist us in filing a formal complaint, given your legal expertise? Jasmine smiled. It would be my pleasure. Power shift. Patricia's entire world crumbled in real time. The HOA board members whispered amongst themselves. Neighbors who had once greeted Patricia with friendly waves now glared at her. Someone muttered, I knew something was off. Patricia's jaw clenched. You can't just... Oh, but I can, Jasmine said, standing. See, Patricia, I'm not just some random homeowner you can bully into submission. I'm a civil rights attorney, and I specialize in exposing people like you. Patricia's mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, she looked small. Jasmine picked up her folder and adjusted her blazer. Oh, and Patricia? She leaned in just enough for only her to hear. Next time you call the police on me, make sure you're not the one with skeletons in your closet. Then she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Patricia to drown in the wreckage of her own making. The fallout was immediate. By the time Patricia left the meeting, her once carefully cultivated image as a neighborhood watchdog had completely unraveled. That evening, an official email was sent to all residents. Subject: HOA Board Update and Investigation. Dear residents, after reviewing financial records and community complaints, the HOA Board has launched an official investigation into Patricia Whitmore for misconduct, including the misappropriation of HOA funds and false reports against fellow homeowners. Effective immediately, she has been suspended from her position, pending further legal review. We remain committed to ensuring fairness and accountability in our community. Sincerely, HOA Board of Directors. The next morning, Patricia's house, once a gathering spot for her like-minded clique, felt eerily quiet. Neighbors who once smiled at her in passing now avoided eye contact. Some even openly glared. A few HOA members, now realizing they had blindly followed her lead, began publicly distancing themselves. One woman whispered, I can't believe we trusted her. Another man scoffed. She's lucky if she doesn't end up in court. Patricia, however, wasn't handling it well. She tried to salvage her reputation, sending out a defensive email claiming she was targeted unfairly. But no one bought it. By the end of the week, she had resigned from the HOA. By the end of the month, she had put her house up for sale. The woman who had once controlled the neighborhood was now being driven out of it. Karma had arrived, and it had Jasmine Lawson's name written all over it, triumphant close. As for Jasmine, she sat on her back porch one evening, watching the sunset reflect off the surface of her pool. The very same pool that Patricia had called the police over. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her phone buzzed. Incoming call, Detective Marcus Reed. She smirked before answering. Evening, Marcus. Evening, Jazz, he said, amusement in his voice. You hear the news? Oh, you mean about Patricia leaving? Yeah, I heard. Marcus chuckled. You really did a number on her. Jasmine sipped her wine. She did it to herself. I just sped up the process. He hummed. So, how does it feel? Jasmine exhaled, gazing at the sky. It feels right. Because it wasn't just about Patricia. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel unwelcome. Every time someone had been treated as though they didn't belong. Tonight, Jasmine wasn't just sitting by her pool. She was sitting in a neighborhood that she had claimed on her terms, and no one could take that from her. Final reflection. As the evening air grew cooler, Jasmine leaned back in her chair, thinking about everything that had happened. Had it been exhausting? Absolutely. But had it been worth it? Without question. She had stood her ground. She had won. And not because she was loud. Not because she had played dirty. But because she had let the truth do the talking. And in the end, the truth had been louder than anything Patricia Whitmore could have ever imagined. With a final, satisfied sip of her wine, Jasmine smiled to herself. This was home, and it always would be.